Another day, another diplomatic disaster, Zondar muttered, staring out the viewport of his ship as the blue-green orb of Earth grew larger. His third appendage twitched nervously, a habit his spawning mentor had always scolded him for. How does one insignificant planet cause so much trouble? The question wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but his assistant Pel-Ra felt compelled to answer anyway. The humans are unpredictable, Commander. Unpredictable? Hey, that's the understatement of the galactic cycle. Zondar barked, his purple skin flushing a deeper violet. 3 diplomatic missions. 3. And what do we have to show for it? Nothing but embarrassment and confusion. The truth was, Zondar hadn't wanted this assignment. Nobody did. Earth was considered the diplomatic equivalent of a punishment posting, a backwater planet inhabited by beings who, despite their technological inferiority, would somehow manage to confound the Confederation's most experienced negotiators. The first mission had ended when Ambassador Vorex stormed out after humans laughed at his ceremonial headdress. The second collapsed when Ambassador Trill Lex discovered humans had been recording all private negotiations and broadcasting them to their global information network. And the third? Well, nobody talked about the third mission. The records were sealed by direct order of the High Council. Tell me again why we care about these primitives, Zondar demanded, turning away from the viewport. They have barely mastered basic interplanetary travel. Their weaponry is laughable. Why not just, I don't know, ignore them until they catch up with the rest of the galaxy in a few centuries? Pel-Ra nervously shuffled the datapads in her forearms. The Council believes Earth sits at a strategically important junction point for the upcoming expansion into the Orion Spur. And there's the matter of their unusual biology. Ah, yes, the infamous human adaptability. Zondar rolled all 3 of his eyes simultaneously. Supposedly they can survive conditions that would kill most sentient species. Probably just propaganda they spread themselves. The ship's communication panel chimed, indicating they'd entered Earth's detection range. Soon they would begin the landing procedures and Zondar would face his new diplomatic counterpart, someone called Ambassador Parker. Probably another stubborn, irrational human who didn't understand the honor being bestowed upon their insignificant world. Commander, there's something you should know before we land, Pel-Ra said hesitantly. This Ambassador Parker, she has a reputation. Don't they all? Zondar snorted derisively. Let me guess, another military type who thinks diplomacy is just war by other means? No, sir. Actually, she's considered unpredictable, even by human standards. Wonderful, Zondar's voice dripped with sarcasm. So they have assigned their most erratic representative to negotiate with us. Clearly they are taking this very seriously. The truth was, Zondar knew exactly why he'd been assigned to this mission. His career had been on a downward trajectory ever since the Proxima Centauri incident. The High Council needed someone expendable for this mission, someone whose career wouldn't be missed if things went sideways. Again. Sir, the pilot's voice came through the intercom. We have received landing coordinates from Earth's Unified Space Command. They are directing us to their diplomatic compound in a place called Geneva. Fine. Zondar waved dismissively with 2 of his upper limbs. Let's get this over with. Prepare the treaty documents and the ceremonial gifts. And Pel-Ra? Well, yes, Commander? Make sure none of the gifts can be construed as insulting this time. No plant species, no artwork, and definitely nothing that resembles any of their Earth animals. Just the standard precious metals and technological trinkets. As the ship began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, Zondar mentally prepared himself for failure. After all, if 3 previous ambassadors couldn't secure a treaty with these humans, what chance did he have? The High Council would blame him, of course, but perhaps the embarrassment would be minimal enough that he could salvage what remained of his once promising career. What he didn't expect was that his mission would change the course of galactic politics forever. And it would all be because of one stubborn human who simply refused to sign on the dotted line. The Galactic Confederation had encountered thousands of species across its 50,000-year history. Some were welcomed easily into the fold. Others required persuasion. A few needed the gentle application of military pressure. But none, absolutely none, had proven as frustrating as the humans of Earth. "Refresh my memory on their history," Zondar said as their ship completed its landing sequence. "I want to be prepared for whatever nonsense this Parker person throws at me." Pel-Ra activated her data pad. Humans discovered faster-than-light travel only 47 cycles ago. They've established colonies on 11 worlds within their solar system and have exploration outposts in neighboring systems. Technologically, they are at level 3, with some surprising level 4 advancements in computational systems and weapons technology. Weapons? Zondar huffed. Of course, that's where they excel. Their political structure is fractured, over 200 nation-states, though they have established an overarching United Earth government for extraplanetary matters. Ambassador Parker represents this UAE. The ship settled onto the landing pad with a gentle thud. Through the viewport, Zondar could see a welcoming committee of humans dressed in formal attire. They looked so fragile with their soft skin and lack of protective exoskeletons. "And why exactly does the Confederation need these creatures?" he asked, not for the first time. Pel-Ra lowered her voice, though they were alone in the command chamber. "Several reasons, sir. First, as mentioned, their location. The Rigelian expansion requires stable transit through this sector, and having Earth as an ally rather than a potential disruption point is preferred." "They couldn't possibly disrupt Confederation operations," Zondar scoffed. "Perhaps not conventionally," Pel-Ra agreed. "But there's more. The Science Directorate has identified several unique properties in human physiology that could be valuable. Their adaptive immune response, their cellular regeneration capabilities, their neuroplasticity, all significantly advanced for their evolutionary stage. So we want to study them," Zondar concluded. "Turn them into lab specimens. The treaty includes provisions for voluntary medical exchange programs," Pel-Ra corrected diplomatically. "Voluntary?" "Right." Zondar's middle eye narrowed skeptically. "And what aren't you telling me?" Pel-Ra hesitated. "There are concerns about human unpredictability. The Predictive Algorithms Division has run thousands of simulations on human development trajectories. In 68% of scenarios, they eventually develop technologies that could threaten Confederation interests." "In how many cycles?" "Thousands?" "No, sir. In as few as 300. Zondar let out a low whistle, a sound his species made when truly surprised. "That's concerning. Hence the treaty. If humans are bound by Confederation law, their development can be guided appropriately." The implications weren't lost on Zondar. The Confederation wasn't offering Earth membership out of benevolence or respect. This was containment strategy disguised as diplomacy. A peace treaty designed to ensure humans remained useful but unthreatening. "Let me guess," Zondar said dryly. "None of the previous ambassadors shared this particular motivation with the humans." "Of course not." Pel-Ra looked shocked at the very suggestion. "The treaty is presented as a tremendous honor. Earth would gain access to Confederation trade routes, cultural exchanges, limited technology transfers, while conveniently submitting to development restrictions, resource quotas, and mandatory cultural preservation zones that just happen to prevent them from expanding too quickly," Zondar finished. "Plus those voluntary medical programs that aren't really voluntary once they sign. The High Council believes it's for the best," Pel-Ra said stiffly. "Humans are unpredictable." "You keep saying that," Zondar noted. "What exactly makes them so unpredictable?" "They don't follow logical progression paths. They make intuitive leaps. They deliberately pursue dangerous research avenues. They value individual innovation over collective stability. The predictive algorithms simply can't model them effectively." The disembarkation signal sounded, indicating it was time to meet the human welcoming committee. Well, Zondar adjusted his formal diplomatic sash. At least this should be interesting. One last question. What happened to the last ambassador who tried to negotiate with Parker? Pel-Ra's skin paled slightly. Ambassador Virkan requested reassignment to the methane mines of Titan rather than continue negotiations. The methane mines. Zondar's crest rose in alarm. Those are penal colonies. Yes, Pel-Ra replied quietly. He considered it preferable to another meeting with Ambassador Parker. As the ship's ramp extended downward, Zondar squared his shoulders. Whatever this human was capable of, he was a seasoned Confederation diplomat. He'd negotiated with the silicon-based hive minds of Procyon IV and survived the ritual combat preliminaries of the Tau Ceti Accords. But how difficult could one human possibly be? The Human Welcoming Committee was smaller than protocol dictated, just 5 individuals instead of the customary 12. Zondar noted this immediately and filed it away as the first of what would undoubtedly be many slights. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Zondar," said a tall human with silver hair. "I'm General Howard Thompson, United Earth Defense Force. We are honored to host the Galactic Confederation's delegation." Zondar performed the traditional greeting gesture, extending his primary and secondary right arms while keeping his third tucked respectfully against his thorax. "The honor is mutual, General Thompson. May our discussions prove fruitful for both our peoples." The pleasantries continued as introductions were made around the circle. A science advisor, a cultural attack, a linguistic specialist. But notably absent was the one human Zondar had come to meet. "And Ambassador Parker?" he inquired, trying to keep the annoyance from his voice. "I was under the impression she would be present for our arrival." An uncomfortable silence fell over the human delegation. General Thompson cleared his throat. "Ambassador Parker sends her apologies. She's been delayed. She's asked that we escort you to the diplomatic quarters where you can refresh yourselves after your journey. She will join you for the evening meal." "Delayed," Zondar repeated flatly. "I see." This was beyond a slight. It was an outright insult. In Confederation protocol, failing to greet an arriving diplomatic mission was tantamount to declaring hostilities. Pel-Ra shot him a warning glance, clearly concerned he might overreact. How thoughtful Zondar managed, his voice tight. "We would be grateful for the opportunity to acclimate to your planet's conditions before formal discussions begin." The diplomatic quarters turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. The humans had clearly researched Gal-Terran physiological needs, providing appropriate atmospheric adjustments, nutritional options, and even recreational facilities designed for beings with multiple limbs. "At least they are trying," Pel-Ra offered as they settled in. "Trying isn't succeeding," Zondar grumbled, but even he had to admit the accommodations were more than adequate. 6 hours later, after a thorough briefing with his team and a quick session in the recuperation tank, Zondar was escorted to what the humans called a dining room, a curious custom of gathering around harvested nutrients rather than simply consuming them in efficient isolation. And there, at the head of an absurdly long table, sat a human that could only be Ambassador Parker. She wasn't what he'd expected. Previous reports had led him to envision a towering, intimidating figure, perhaps one of those humans artificially enhanced for combat purposes. Instead, Parker was small, even by human standards. Her skin was a rich brown, her hair cropped close to her skull, and her eyes were what caught Zondar's attention. They seemed to analyze everything, missing nothing. "Ambassador Zondar," she rose as he entered, her voice carrying easily across the room. "My sincere apologies for not greeting you upon arrival. I was dealing with an urgent matter involving the Proxima colony." The mention of Proxima sent a jolt through Zondar. That was his failure, his disgrace. How did she know to mention it? Was this some kind of psychological tactic? "No apology necessary, Ambassador Parker," he lied smoothly. "Interstellar diplomacy often demands flexibility in scheduling." "Please call me Josephine," she smiled, gesturing to the seat at her right, the position of honor in human custom. and I hope you will forgive our rather informal approach to these negotiations. We humans find that breaking bread together often leads to more productive discussions than formal chamber meetings. Breaking bread? Zondar glanced at Pel-Ra, who quickly consulted her cultural database. A human idiom, she whispered. It refers to sharing a meal as a symbol of peace and friendship. Ah, Zondar nodded, taking his seat. Then I look forward to breaking bread with you, Josephine. The meal proceeded with surprising pleasantness. The human chef had prepared several dishes compatible with Gal-Terran biology, and Josephine proved to be a knowledgeable and engaging conversationalist. She asked intelligent questions about Confederation culture, governance structures, and scientific advancements, carefully avoiding any topics that might be considered sensitive. By the time the meal concluded, Zondar found himself revising his opinion. Perhaps the previous ambassadors had simply approached humans incorrectly, perhaps with the right diplomatic touch. So, Josephine said, leaning back in her chair as servants cleared away the remnants of their meal. Let's discuss the real reason you are here, Ambassador. The peace treaty, Zondar acknowledged, a historic opportunity for Earth to join the galactic community. Yes, the treaty, Josephine's eyes sharpened. The same treaty that's been rejected 3 times already. Previous misunderstandings, Zondar waved dismissively with his third arm, cultural differences that led to unfortunate communication breakdowns. Is that what you call them? Josephine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Misunderstandings? Not deliberate attempts to conceal key provisions within subsections of seemingly benign articles. Zondar felt his skin temperature rising. I assure you, Ambassador, the Confederation approaches these negotiations with complete transparency. But let me be direct. Ambassador Zondar, Josephine interrupted. Earth wants peaceful relations with the Galactic Confederation. We are eager to learn, to trade, to become part of the wider galactic community. But we won't be subjugated, controlled, or exploited. Not even subtly. No one is suggesting. The last treaty contained provisions that would have given Confederation research teams unrestricted access to human genetic material, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. The one before that included clauses that would have effectively prevented us from colonizing any new worlds without Confederation approval. And all 3 treaties contained economic terms that would have reduced Earth to a resource extraction colony within 50 years. Zondar stared at her, genuinely surprised. The humans had understood the implications of those buried clauses. The Confederation's legal experts had spent decades perfecting the art of hiding restrictive provisions within seemingly beneficial agreements. Species far more advanced than humans routinely signed without catching them. I see you are surprised, Josephine noted with another of those cold smiles. Did you think we wouldn't have our own legal experts analyze every word, every punctuation mark? Did you think we wouldn't run our own projections on how these terms would affect Earth's development? For the first time in his diplomatic career, Zondar found himself at a complete loss for words. Tomorrow morning, Josephine continued, rising from her seat, we will begin formal negotiations. I suggest you come prepared with a treaty that respects Earth as a true partner, not a resource to be exploited or a potential threat to be contained. Otherwise, I'm afraid you will be the 4th ambassador to leave empty-handed. With that, she nodded politely and left the room, leaving Zondar staring after her in stunned silence. Well, Pel-Ra said after a long moment, she's certainly direct. She's impossible, Zondar growled. The High Council won't authorize any significant changes to the treaty terms. They have made that abundantly clear. Then perhaps, Pel-Ra suggested quietly, this mission was doomed before we even arrived. Zondar couldn't disagree. But failure wasn't an option, not if he wanted to salvage what remained of his career. Somehow he needed to convince this human to sign a treaty she had already seen through. The real negotiations, it seemed, were about to begin. The Geneva diplomatic complex's main negotiation chamber was designed to intimidate. Massive windows overlooked the pristine lake, ceiling heights that made even the tallest species feel small, and acoustics that ensured every word carried with perfect clarity. It was a power play, Zondar realized. The humans wanted visitors to understand that while Earth might be technologically behind, they weren't to be underestimated. Josephine Parker arrived precisely on time, accompanied by a smaller team than protocol suggested, just 3 advisors compared to Zondar's 7. Another calculated move. She was communicating that she didn't need a small army of experts to match him. "Good morning, Ambassador," she greeted him warmly, as if their tense exchange the previous evening had never happened. "Shall we begin?" Zondar had spent half the night revising his approach. The standard Confederation strategy of overwhelming new species with technical jargon and legal complexities clearly wouldn't work here. He needed to be direct, or at least appear to be. "Before we review the treaty document," he began, "I'd like to address your concerns from last night. The Confederation values Earth as a potential partner. Any provisions that seemed restrictive were merely standard regulatory frameworks that all member worlds adhere to." "I see," Josephine nodded. "And do these standard regulatory frameworks typically limit a species' right to develop new technologies without oversight? Do they usually require the surrender of biological samples for unspecified research purposes?" Zondar forced his expression to remain neutral. "Perhaps we should review the specific articles that concern you." "Excellent suggestion," Josephine smiled, tapping her data pad. The room's holographic projector activated, displaying Article 37, subsection 14 of the treaty. "Let's start here." For the next 4 hours, Josephine methodically dissected the treaty, pointing out hidden restrictions, double meanings, and deliberately vague language that could be interpreted to the Confederation's advantage. Her legal knowledge was impressive, her attention to detail relentless. "You see the problem with Article 42, don't you?" she asked, highlighting a particularly innocuous-looking section about cultural exchange programs. "This gives Confederation observers the right to establish permanent monitoring stations in any human settlement, including military installations." "That's a very creative interpretation," Zondar said carefully. "Is it? Then you won't mind if we revise the language to explicitly exclude military facilities?" "The High Council has approved this treaty text in its current form," Zondar replied stiffly. "I don't have authority to make substantive changes." "Then we have a problem." Josephine leaned back in her chair. "Because Earth will not sign a treaty that compromises our sovereignty or security." The pattern continued through lunch, another human custom Zondar found unnecessary, and into the afternoon. For every objection Josephine raised, Zondar had to either defend the provision or admit he couldn't change it. By the time they reached Article 87, barely halfway through the document, tension in the room was palpable. "Let's address the Proxima Centauri situation," Josephine said, suddenly, changing topic so abruptly that Zondar's crest rose in alarm. "That's not relevant to these negotiations," he said quickly. "I disagree," Josephine countered. "Your previous diplomatic posting ended with the Proxima incident, did it not? A human colony that refused Confederation mining rights to their system, followed by an unfortunate series of pirate attacks that destroyed their defensive capabilities." Zondar felt his skin flush dark purple. Those attacks were investigated and found to be the work of non-Confederation entities. The timing was unfortunate. "Very unfortunate," Josephine agreed, her voice dangerously soft. "Especially when those same pirates seem to have access to Confederation military transponder codes." "That's a serious accusation." Zondar's voice grew cold. "One without evidence." On the contrary, Josephine tapped her pad again, and new information appeared in the holographic display. "We have extensive sensor logs from the Proxima defense grid before it was destroyed. Logs that show ships using legitimate Confederation military signatures." Zondar stared at the data in horror. This was classified information that implicated the Confederation in direct military action against human settlements. Information that his superiors had assured him was destroyed in the attack. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Earth has resources beyond what the Confederation has estimated, Josephine replied simply, including intelligence-gathering capabilities. The implications were staggering. If humans could access this kind of classified Confederation data, what else might they know? The carefully constructed image of technological superiority that underpinned Confederation diplomacy suddenly seemed much less secure. What exactly are you suggesting, Ambassador Parker? Zondar asked carefully. I'm suggesting that Earth knows exactly what kind of partnership the Confederation is offering, she replied. And we are not interested. We want genuine cooperation, mutual respect, and recognition of our sovereignty. Anything less is unacceptable. The Confederation represents over 3,000 worlds, Zondar reminded her, trying to regain control of the conversation. The stability of galactic society depends on standardized legal frameworks that all members adhere to. Then perhaps Earth isn't ready for membership, Josephine said simply. This was spiraling out of control. Zondar needed time to consult with the High Council to determine how to proceed given this unexpected development. The humans knew too much, were too prepared. I propose we adjourn for today, he said, trying to sound confident rather than rattled. My team and I will review your concerns and consult with our superiors about possible revisions. Of course, Josephine smiled pleasantly, as if they'd been discussing nothing more controversial than the weather. We will reconvene tomorrow at the same time. And, Ambassador? Yes? I hope your superiors understand that Earth won't sign a treaty that doesn't treat us as equals. The days when the Confederation could dictate terms to primitive species are over, at least as far as humans are concerned. As Zondar gathered his materials and prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was heading toward disaster. The High Council would never agree to the kind of equal partnership Josephine was demanding. But refusing outright risked exposing the Confederation's less than honorable intentions toward Earth. For the first time, he began to understand why his predecessors had failed so spectacularly. The humans weren't just stubborn, they were dangerous. Absolutely not, High Counselor Vexmon's holographic image shimmered with rage. The treaty stands as written. Earth will accept our terms or face the consequences. Zondar had spent hours in secure communication with the High Council, reporting on the disastrous first day of negotiations and the humans' unexpected knowledge of classified operations. The response was not what he'd hoped for. Counselor, with respect, he tried again. The humans have intelligence on the Proxima operation. They have evidence of Confederation military involvement. If this becomes public knowledge, it won't, Vexmon cut him off, because you will ensure the treaty is signed, which includes the provision requiring Earth to surrender all data related to Confederation operations. They won't sign, Zondar insisted. Not as the treaty currently stands. Then make them sign. The counselor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Remind them of their position in the galactic hierarchy. Remind them what happens to worlds that defy the Confederation. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Zondar staring at empty space. This wasn't diplomacy anymore, it was coercion. And somehow he doubted Josephine Parker would respond well to threats. The next morning, Zondar arrived at the negotiation chamber with a sense of impending doom. His instructions were clear: secure Earth's signature by any means necessary. The unspoken implication was equally clear: failure would mean the end of his career, if not worse. Josephine was already seated when he entered, looking refreshed and calm. "Good morning, Ambassador. I trust you have had productive discussions with your superiors?" Indeed, Zondar forced confidence into his voice. "I have been authorized to present the Confederation's final offer." With a gesture, he activated the holographic display, showing the treaty document, completely unchanged from the previous day. "This is the same treaty," Josephine observed, her expression unreadable. "With one important difference," Zondar replied: "the timeline for implementation. The Confederation is prepared to offer Earth a 50-cycle grace period before full compliance with certain regulatory provisions is required. 50 years to prepare for subjugation instead of immediate subjugation, Josephine translated. How generous. Zondar's patience was wearing thin. Ambassador Parker, perhaps you fail to grasp the significance of what's being offered here. The Galactic Confederation rarely extends membership to species at your technological level. This is an unprecedented opportunity for Earth. An opportunity for what exactly? Josephine asked, her voice hardening. To surrender our resources? To submit our people for experimentation? To halt our development at a pace dictated by a foreign power? An opportunity to join the galactic community under the protection of the most powerful alliance in known space, Zondar countered. The alternative is isolation, Ambassador. Earth alone in a dangerous universe. Josephine leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. Is that a threat? Ambassador Zondar? The moment had come. Following his instructions would mean crossing a line, from diplomat to bully. But disobeying meant personal ruin. It is reality, he said finally. The Confederation has identified Earth as a strategic location for the upcoming Rigelian expansion. One way or another, this sector will come under Confederation jurisdiction. The only question is whether Earth does so as a willing partner or otherwise. A heavy silence fell over the room. Josephine's advisors exchanged glances, but her expression remained composed. I see, she said at last. Then let me be equally clear, Ambassador. Earth refuses your treaty. Not just this version, any version that doesn't recognize our full sovereignty and right to self-determination. Despite expecting this response, hearing it stated so bluntly sent a shock through Zondar's system. You can't refuse. The consequences. We understand the consequences, Josephine interrupted. We have studied your history, Ambassador. We know what happened to the Altarians when they refused Confederation terms, and the Deneb coalition. And yes, we know what really happened at Proxima Centauri. She stood, gathering her materials. Earth is not those worlds. We have prepared for this possibility since first contact. Whatever consequences you are threatening, we are ready to face them. This is madness. Zondar rose as well, his crest fully extended in agitation. One planet against the combined might of 3,000 worlds? You are signing your own extinction order. Maybe, Josephine acknowledged with remarkable calm. Or maybe the Confederation isn't as united as it appears. Maybe there are member worlds who would object to unprovoked aggression against a peaceful species. Maybe exposing your tactics would cause more problems for you than for us. She was right, Zondar realized with growing horror. The Confederation maintained control through a careful balance of benefits and threats. If evidence of their strong-arm tactics became widely known, particularly among newer member worlds. This discussion isn't over, he warned, trying to salvage something from the diplomatic wreckage. The High Council will not accept this outcome. Then they are welcome to send a fifth ambassador, Josephine replied, walking toward the door. But the answer will remain the same. Earth will not surrender its future to the Confederation. As she reached the threshold, she paused and looked back. You have 48 hours to depart Earth space, Ambassador Zondar. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety. You are expelling a Confederation diplomatic mission? Zondar couldn't believe what he was hearing. That's an act of war. No, Josephine corrected him. Threatening a sovereign world with military action if they don't sign away their rights, that's an act of war. We are simply responding appropriately. With that, she was gone, leaving Zondar standing amid the ruins of his diplomatic mission and quite possibly his career. Well, Pel-Ra said after a long silence, that could have gone better. Prepare the ship, Zondar ordered, his voice hollow. We are leaving. As they hurried back to their compound, Zondar couldn't shake the feeling that something unprecedented had just occurred. No species had ever so boldly rejected Confederation demands and lived to tell about it. The humans had just made galactic history. The question was whether they'd survive to see what came next. The scene aboard Zondar's ship as they prepared for emergency departure was one of controlled chaos. staff frantically packed diplomatic materials, secured sensitive equipment, and transferred data to secure storage. Through it all, Zondar sat motionless in his private chamber, staring at the communication terminal. He had to report this catastrophic failure to the High Council. His career was over, that much was certain. But what would happen to Earth? The Confederation didn't tolerate defiance, especially not from primitive species with delusions of independence. Commander, Pel-Ra's voice came through the intercom. "You should see this." Zondar sighed heavily. "Whatever it is can wait until we are in orbit." "Sir, I really think you need to see this now." Something in her tone caught his attention. Reluctantly, he made his way to the command center, where Pel-Ra and several other staff members were gathered around a display showing an Earth News broadcast. "Unprecedented unity," a human reporter was saying. "Representatives from all 218 nation-states have signed the declaration supporting Ambassador Parker's decision to reject the Confederation Treaty. World leaders are calling it the Earth Sovereignty Accord." The scene shifted to show a massive gathering of humans in formal attire, applauding as Josephine Parker approached a podium. "I don't understand," Zondar said. "This should be causing panic, not celebration. We just threatened them with potential military action." "Just watch," Pel-Ra urged. On screen, Josephine began to speak. "For generations, humanity has looked to the stars and wondered if we were alone. When we discovered we weren't, we hoped for partnership, for exchange of knowledge and culture. What the Galactic Confederation offered instead was subjugation disguised as opportunity." The crowd murmured in agreement. "Today, Earth has spoken with one voice," she continued. "We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not compromise our future. We will not be intimidated by threats, no matter how powerful the entity making them." Thunderous applause followed this declaration. "To the people of Earth." Josephine's voice grew stronger. "I want to be transparent about what this means. The Confederation may respond with economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or even military action. We have prepared for these possibilities. Our defense systems are activated. Our colonies are on alert. Our allies among other species have been notified." Zondar's crest rose in alarm. "Allies? What allies?" "But know this," Josephine continued, unaware of the consternation she was causing aboard the Confederation vessel. "Earth does not stand alone. In the 3 years since first contact, we have established relations with 17 non-Confederation worlds. Worlds who have experienced similar pressure tactics. Worlds who have chosen independence over submission. 17 worlds? Zondar couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That's impossible. Our intelligence would have detected such diplomacy." "Apparently not," Pel-Ra murmured. On screen, Josephine was concluding her address. "We remain open to genuine partnership with the Confederation, one based on mutual respect and recognition of sovereignty. But we will not be coerced, threatened, or manipulated. That is the united position of humanity, today and always." As she stepped away from the podium, the assembled leaders rose in standing ovation. The broadcast then cut to various scenes around Earth, crowds gathering in public spaces, military vessels launching from oceanic bases, orbital defense platforms activating their systems. They were prepared for this, Zondar realized aloud. They anticipated our response and had countermeasures ready. "Sir," one of the junior analysts spoke up, "we are detecting unusual activity in Earth orbit. Multiple defense platforms are moving into position. Their weapons systems appear to be active." "Are they targeting us?" Zondar demanded. "No, sir. They are establishing a defensive perimeter around the planet. But our sensors are also detecting something else." The analyst looked confused. "Signatures that don't match known Earth technology." Before Zondar could process this information, the communication terminal chimed. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," the system announced. "Put it through," Zondar ordered, straightening his posture and trying to look more dignified than he felt. Josephine Parker's face appeared on the screen, her expression serious but not hostile. Ambassador Zondar, I trust your departure preparations are proceeding smoothly? They are, he confirmed stiffly. Though I must protest the unnecessarily short time frame proper diplomatic protocol allows for. The time frame reflects our assessment of the Confederation's likely response, she interrupted. We expect your superiors to dispatch military vessels once they learn of our refusal. We'd prefer you be well away from Earth before they arrive. Her candor was surprising. You seem remarkably calm about the prospect of Confederation warships entering your system. We are realistic, not calm, she corrected. War benefits no one. But if the Confederation forces the issue, they will find Earth better defended than your intelligence suggests. As if on cue, the censor officer called out, Sir. Multiple ships decloaking in high orbit. The configuration unknown. Show me, Zondar ordered, and the main view screen split to display both Josephine and the censor readings. What he saw left him speechless. Dozens of vessels had appeared in Earth orbit, vessels of clearly advanced design, with technology signatures that matched no known Confederation species. As I said, Josephine noted, observing his reaction, Earth doesn't stand alone. The Confederation's habit of strong arming primitive species has created quite a coalition of the unwilling. We call ourselves the Free Worlds Alliance. This is unprecedented, Zondar managed. History is full of unprecedented moments. Ambassador, Josephine replied. This is simply one more. Now, I suggest you complete your preparations and depart as scheduled. Your safe passage is guaranteed so long as you make no hostile moves. The transmission ended before Zondar could respond. Orders, sir. Pel-Ra asked after a moment of stunned silence. Zondar stared at the sensor display, at the unknown vessels that represented a complete intelligence failure on the Confederation's part. How had humans managed to form alliances with other species without detection? Who were these allies? What else had the Confederation missed? Complete departure preparations, he said finally. We are leaving as scheduled, and prepare a full report for the High Council. They need to know that the situation here is not what we thought. As his crew hurried to obey, Zondar returned to his private chamber. His career might be over, but he was beginning to wonder if that was the least of the Confederation's problems. For the first time in thousands of cycles, they faced organized resistance from species they'd dismissed as insignificant. All because one human woman had simply said no. The journey back to Confederation space gave Zondar ample time to contemplate the disaster he was returning to report. The High Council would be furious. Heads would roll, perhaps literally, and his would likely be first on the chopping block. Yet as he reviewed the mission records, analyzed the interactions with Ambassador Parker, and studied what little information they had about this Free Worlds Alliance, a strange feeling began to grow within him. Not fear or anger, but curiosity. Pel-Ra, he called, making a sudden decision. Bring me everything we have on human psychology. Every cultural analysis, every behavioral study, everything. For the next 3 days, Zondar immersed himself in the study of humanity. Most of the Confederation's research focused on human biology, their unusual adaptability, their efficient immune systems, their neurological structure. But scattered throughout were observations about their social structures, their decision-making processes, their emotional responses. Fascinating, he muttered, reviewing a psychological assessment. They value perceived fairness over objective benefit. They will reject advantageous arrangements if they believe the terms are inequitable. Sir? Pel-Ra had been assisting with his research, though she clearly didn't understand his sudden interest. Look at this study, he pointed to the display. Confederation scientists offered humans clearly beneficial technology in exchange for minimal resource rights. The humans refused because they believed the exchange was unbalanced in our favor, even though objectively they gained more than they lost. Irrational, Pel-Ra commented. Is it? Zondar challenged. Or is it a different form of rationality? One based on principles rather than immediate advantage? He pulled up another report. And this, humans will cooperate with perceived enemies against a common threat, then resume their conflicts afterward. They form alliances based on shared values rather than shared biology or evolutionary history. That explains their coalition with non-Confederation species, Pel-Ra acknowledged. Exactly. Zondar's crest rose with excitement. The Confederation has always approached diplomacy from a position of biological determinism. Species with similar evolutionary paths are natural allies. Those with different ones are natural competitors. That's basic exobiology, Pel-Ra pointed out. Yes, but humans don't think that way, Zondar insisted. They form connections based on shared experiences, shared values, shared goals. That's how they created this alliance without our knowledge. They weren't looking for species like themselves. They were looking for species who had similar experiences with the Confederation. He pulled up a star chart, highlighting known non-Confederation worlds, species we have dismissed as insignificant because they are biologically different from dominant Confederation species. Species we have pressured with similar diplomatic tactics. You are suggesting humans united these disparate species against us? Pel-Ra sounded skeptical. Not against us, specifically, Zondar clarified, for themselves. For their shared belief in, what did Parker call it? Self-determination. Another report caught his attention, a linguistic analysis of human communication patterns. Look at this. Humans use metaphor and narrative to make sense of complex situations. They don't just exchange information, they tell stories about it. And those stories shape their understanding and response. What's your point, Commander? Zondar leaned back, his three eyes focusing on different displays simultaneously. My point is that we have fundamentally misunderstood humans from the beginning. We have been approaching them as if they are simply another biological entity to be classified, studied, and eventually assimilated into the Confederation's hierarchy. Aren't they? No, Zondar said firmly. They are something we haven't encountered before. It's a species whose greatest strength isn't their technology or their biology, but their ability to form connections across biological boundaries, to unite diverse entities around shared values. And this matters because, Zondar said slowly, the Confederation's entire diplomatic and military strategy is based on dealing with individual species in isolation. We'll divide and conquer. We have never faced a multi-species alliance that wasn't of our own creation. Pel-Ra's expression shifted as she began to understand the implications. You think this Free Worlds alliance poses a genuine threat? Not yet, Zondar admitted. But given time, if humans continue to unite species we have dismissed as irrelevant, if they share technology, resources, intelligence, yes, they could become a significant counterbalance to Confederation power. The High Council needs to hear this, Pel-Ra said urgently. Yes, Zondar agreed. But will they listen? Our entire civilization is built on the assumption of biological superiority. The idea that primitive species could challenge us through cooperation rather than technology, it contradicts thousands of cycles of Confederation doctrine. As their ship approached the Confederation border, Zondar made a decision. He would present his analysis to the High Council, regardless of the personal consequences. Because if he was right, if humans truly represented a new kind of threat, then the Confederation's standard response of intimidation and force would only make the situation worse. For the first time in his career, Zondar found himself hoping that diplomacy would prevail over military action. Not for his own sake, but because he was beginning to suspect that humans were far more dangerous than the Confederation had ever imagined. Not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their ideas. And ideas, as the ancient Gal-Taran philosopher Vexlorum had warned, were the most contagious pathogens in the galaxy. The Hall of Deliberation on the Confederation capital world of Gal-Tor was designed to inspire awe and fear. Towering columns of crystallized plasma rose hundreds of meters toward a ceiling that displayed real-time images of Confederation military victories. The High Council members sat on elevated platforms, literally looking down on anyone summoned before them. Zondar stood at the center of this intimidating space, completing his report on the Earth mission. Around him, The 9 members of the High Council listened in stunned silence. So, not only did you fail to secure the treaty, High Counselor Vexmon summarized when Zondar finished, but you have returned with news of a previously unknown alliance of non-Confederation worlds centered around this primitive species? Yes, Counselor, Zondar confirmed. The Free Worlds Alliance appears to include at least 17 independent worlds, possibly more. Our intelligence on their capabilities is limited, but the vessels I observed in Earth orbit displayed technology significantly beyond what we believed humans possessed. Could they have been human vessels disguised to appear alien? Another counselor asked. Possible, but unlikely, Zondar replied. Our sensors detected distinct energy signatures consistent with various non-Confederation technologies. Unless humans have mastered perfect replication of multiple alien technological signatures, these were genuine vessels from different species. Vexmon's crest rippled with agitation. How could our intelligence networks have missed this? An alliance of 17 worlds doesn't form overnight. With respect, Counselor, Zondar said carefully, I believe our assessment protocols may be flawed. We categorize species primarily by their technological advancement and biological similarity to dominant Confederation species. Those falling below certain thresholds receive minimal monitoring. You are suggesting these free worlds were all species we dismissed as insignificant? A third counselor asked incredulously. Precisely. Zondar nodded. Individually, none posed any threat to Confederation interests. United under human diplomatic leadership, however. The council chambers erupted in overlapping conversations, some angry, some alarmed. Vexmon raised all 4 arms, calling for silence. This situation is unprecedented, he acknowledged when order was restored, but not unmanageable. The Confederation has faced challenges to its authority before. We will respond as we always have, swiftly and decisively. He turned to the military liaison. Admiral Kraz-Tur, what forces can we deploy to the Earth system? The Admiral, a grizzled veteran of numerous expansion campaigns, activated a holographic display. The 7th Fleet is currently positioned near the Rigelian border. They could reach Earth within 6 cycles, 3 dreadnoughts, 27 battle cruisers, and appropriate support vessels, sufficient to handle both Earth's defenses and these alleged Allied forces? Vexmon asked. Ban asked. Based on available intelligence, yes, the Admiral confirmed. Though I would recommend additional scout vessels to assess the situation before full military engagement. Make it so, Vexmon ordered. The Confederation will not tolerate this insult to our authority. Earth must be taught the consequences of defiance. Zondar felt his throat constrict. This was exactly the response he'd feared, an overwhelming show of force without any attempt to understand the new diplomatic reality. Counselor, he said, knowing he was risking further censure, I strongly advise against military action at this time. All eyes turned to him, most reflecting disbelief at his audacity. You have already failed in your mission, Ambassador, Vexmon said coldly. Your opinion on this matter is neither required nor welcome. Nevertheless, I must offer it, Zondar persisted. My analysis of human psychology and social structures suggests that military threats will only strengthen their resolve and eventually drive more independent worlds to their alliance. What would you suggest instead? Another counselor asked, sounding genuinely curious. That we simply allow this defiance to go unanswered? No, Zondar said quickly. But rather than immediate military action, I propose a more nuanced approach. Diplomatic recognition of the Free Worlds Alliance, followed by good faith negotiations for mutually beneficial trade agreements. Recognition? Vexmon sounded outraged. It would legitimize their resistance. It would acknowledge an already existing reality, Zondar countered, one that our traditional intelligence methods failed to detect. The alliance exists whether we recognize it or not. The question is how we respond to it. For a moment he thought he might have swayed at least some of the council. Then Admiral Kraz-Tur spoke again, he with respect to the diplomatic perspective. he said, his tone making clear how little respect he actually held. This situation has moved beyond negotiation. If word spreads that a primitive species successfully defied the Confederation, other worlds might consider similar actions. The stability of the entire galactic order is at stake. Murmurs of agreement swept through the chamber. Zondar realized he was fighting a losing battle against thousands of cycles of Confederation doctrine. The Seventh Fleet will depart immediately, Vexmon announced. Their orders are to secure the Earth system, dismantle any defensive capabilities, and bring this Ambassador Parker before the Council to answer for her defiance. And if they resist? Zondar asked quietly. Vexmon's expression hardened. Then Earth will serve as an example of what happens to those who challenge Confederation authority. The decision made, the Council moved on to other matters. Zondar was dismissed with instructions to provide all mission data to the Military Intelligence Division. His diplomatic insights were no longer required. As he left the Hall of Deliberation, Zondar felt a profound sense of foreboding. The Confederation was responding exactly as humans had predicted, with overwhelming force rather than diplomacy. It was the response that had worked countless times throughout Confederation history. But something told him that this time would be different. Humans didn't think like other species the Confederation had subjugated. They didn't fear superior technology or military might in the same way. If anything, threats seemed to unite them rather than divide them. For the first time in his long career, Zondar found himself wondering if the Confederation might have finally met its match, not in a technologically superior adversary, but in a species whose greatest weapon was their ability to turn enemies into allies. 6 cycles after the High Council's decision, Zondar found himself summoned to military command. Despite his diplomatic failure, his first-hand knowledge of Earth and its defenses had made him a reluctant consultant to the Seventh Fleet's mission planning. Admiral Krauss-Tur greeted him with barely concealed disdain. Ambassador, your presence has been requested for the final briefing before the fleet enters Earth's system. Admiral, Zondar acknowledged with a formal gesture. I'm somewhat surprised you value my input, given our differing perspectives on this mission. Value is perhaps too strong a word, the Admiral replied coldly. But the High Council insists we utilize all available intelligence, even from compromised sources. Compromised. The implication was clear. Some in the Confederation leadership suspected Zondar's loyalty after his advocacy for diplomacy over military action. It was an absurd suspicion, but one he couldn't openly challenge without making the situation worse. I serve the Confederation as I always have, he said stiffly, by offering my best assessment of the situation, regardless of whether it aligns with prevailing opinion. The Admiral merely grunted and led him into the command center, where a holographic display showed the Seventh Fleet's formation as it approached the outer boundary of Earth's solar system. Our latest intelligence suggests the humans are aware of our approach, Krauss-Tur explained to the assembled officers. Their primitive detection systems shouldn't have that range, but somehow they have tracked our progress since we crossed the Procyon threshold. Another indicator that they have technological assistance from other species, Zondar pointed out. Perhaps, the Admiral conceded reluctantly. More concerning are these readings from our forward scouts. The holographic display shifted to show sensor data from the solar system. What Zondar saw made his crest rise involuntarily. That can't be right, he said, studying the information. These readings suggest defensive installations throughout the system. Not just around Earth, but on multiple moons, asteroids, even artificial platforms in deep space. The readings are accurate, the Admiral confirmed grimly. Somehow, in the brief time since your departure, the humans have established a multi-layered defensive perimeter extending beyond the orbit of their outermost planet. That's impossible, Zondar said. Even with Allied assistance, they couldn't have built this infrastructure so quickly. One of the intelligence officers spoke up. Our analysis suggests they didn't build it after your mission, Ambassador. These installations appear to have been in place for some time, simply concealed from our earlier scans. The implications were staggering. Earth had been preparing for potential conflict with the Confederation since first contact, maybe even before. While Confederation diplomats had been trying to trick humans into signing disadvantageous treaties, humans had been establishing defensive positions throughout their entire system. What about their allied forces? Zondar asked. The non-Confederation vessels I observed in Earth orbit? Present in significantly increased numbers, the Admiral admitted reluctantly. Our scouts have identified vessels matching at least 23 distinct technological signatures, none registered in Confederation databases. 23 species, Zondar murmured. Ambassador Parker claimed 17 allies when I departed. They have added 6 more in just 6 cycles. The Admiral's expression darkened, which suggests our intelligence failure is even more significant than initially believed. These free worlds must have been coordinating for quite some time to mobilize this quickly. Zondar studied the tactical display, noting the positioning of the defensive installations. These aren't random placements, he observed. They are strategically located to funnel approaching vessels into specific corridors. Classic defensive tactics. Yes, the Admiral agreed, sounding almost impressed despite himself. Whoever designed this defense grid understands space combat principles. These aren't the actions of a primitive species fumbling with borrowed technology. So what's the plan? Zondar asked. Admiral Kraz's tour expanded the holographic display. The 7th Fleet will proceed as planned. Our technological superiority remains overwhelming, regardless of these defensive preparations. We will approach through this corridor here. He indicated a seemingly less defended section, neutralize these outer installations, then proceed directly to Earth. You are still planning a full military engagement? Zondar couldn't hide his alarm, despite clear evidence that the humans are far better prepared than we anticipated. The High Council's orders stand, the Admiral said firmly. Earth must be brought into compliance with Confederation authority. The only change is that we will approach with greater caution and increased scanner activity. Admiral, Zondar said carefully, I believe we are making a serious mistake. These preparations suggest humans anticipated our exact response and have planned accordingly. Walking into their defensive grid, even with our technological advantage, could be exactly what they want. Your concern is noted, Ambassador, the Admiral replied dismissively. But the 7th Fleet has never failed in a compliance operation, regardless of defensive preparations. The outcome of this mission is not in doubt. As the briefing continued, detailing the specific approach vectors and engagement protocols, Zondar felt increasingly uneasy. Something about the human preparations seemed off. Their defensive grid was impressive, yes, but still shouldn't be capable of repelling a full Confederation fleet. Were they truly expecting to win a direct military confrontation? Or was there something else at play? He thought back to his conversations with Ambassador Parker, to her calm confidence even when facing threats of military action. We are realistic, not calm, she had said. What did humans know that the Confederation didn't? When the briefing concluded, Zondar approached the Admiral one last time. I request permission to accompany the fleet, he said. My familiarity with human diplomatic representatives might prove useful once military objectives are achieved. The Admiral studied him suspiciously. Your concern for diplomatic niceties seems misplaced, given that this mission will likely end with Earth's unconditional surrender or significant damage to their civilization. Nevertheless, Zondar persisted, I believe I can serve the Confederation's interests best by being present. After a moment's consideration, the Admiral nodded curtly. Permission granted. You will remain aboard the command vessel, away from tactical operations. I won't have a diplomat interfering with military necessities. Understood, Zondar agreed, hiding his relief. He didn't know what was going to happen when the 7th Fleet entered Earth's system, but he was increasingly convinced it wouldn't be the simple compliance operation the Admiral expected. And somehow, against all logic and loyalty, he found himself hoping the humans had one more surprise waiting. The command bridge of the Confederation dreadnought Inexorable will hummed with tense activity as the massive vessel led the 7th Fleet into the outer reaches of Earth's solar system. Admiral Krastur stood at the center of the bridge, his posture radiating confidence despite the unexpected complexity of the mission. Zondar observed from a designated position at the rear, officially present as a diplomatic consultant but practically ignored by the military personnel. All vessels report ready for combat operations, the tactical officer announced. Weapons systems charged, shields at maximum. Proceed as planned, the Admiral ordered. Maintain formation and prepare to engage the outer defensive installations on my command. The fleet moved forward, a testament to Confederation military might. 3 enormous dreadnoughts, each capable of planetary bombardment, flanked by cruisers, destroyers, and support craft. Against most species, such a display of force would prompt immediate surrender. But as the fleet approached the first line of human defenses, something unexpected happened. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission. From Earth." Krastur raised his crest in surprise. "This far out? Their communication technology shouldn't have that range." "The signal is being relayed through the defensive network," the officer explained. "It's a direct message addressed to you and Ambassador Zondar." All eyes turned briefly to Zondar, who felt equally surprised. "Me? Why would they include me in a military communication?" "Put it through," the Admiral ordered after a moment's consideration. "Let's hear what they have to say before we reduce their defenses to debris." The main view screen activated, and Josephine Parker's face appeared. She looked calm, composed, exactly as Zondar remembered her. "Admiral Krastur, Ambassador Zondar," she greeted them formally. "On behalf of Earth and the Free Worlds Alliance, I extend one final opportunity for peaceful resolution before your fleet crosses our defensive perimeter." The Admiral snorted derisively. "Ambassador Parker, I am authorized by the High Council to demand Earth's immediate surrender and compliance with Confederation authority. Your defensive preparations, while noted, cannot hope to withstand the force I command." Perhaps Josephine acknowledged, seemingly unperturbed by the threat. "But before you commit to this course of action, I believe you should be aware of certain facts that may not have been included in your mission briefing. We are aware of your alliance with various non-Confederation species," the Admiral said dismissively. "It does not change the outcome of this operation." "I'm not referring to our allies, Admiral," Josephine replied. "I'm referring to information about the Confederation itself. Information we have acquired through various channels over the past several years." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Information about growing dissent within your own ranks, about member worlds questioning the High Council's policies, about suppressed technological developments that would disrupt the current power balance." The Admiral's expression remained impassive, but Zondar noticed a subtle tension in his posture. "Disinformation and propaganda," Krastur declared. "Desperate attempts to divide the Confederation, is it?" Josephine asked mildly. "Then perhaps you can explain why 14 member worlds have secretly contacted the Free Worlds Alliance about potential membership, or why 3 of your own fleet commanders have expressed concerns about this mission to their subordinates." Now the Admiral's crest rose fully, a sign of genuine alarm in their species. "These are serious allegations, Ambassador Parker. Allegations without evidence. Evidence can be provided," Josephine assured him. "In fact, I have already transmitted a data package to Ambassador Zondar's personal communication device. A sample of what we know." Zondar felt the small device in his pocket vibrate subtly. He hadn't even realized humans had the capability to target individual communication systems within a Confederation vessel. "Admiral," Josephine continued, "Earth doesn't want conflict with the Confederation. We never have. What we want, what all members of the Free Worlds Alliance want, is the right to self-determination, the right to develop without interference or exploitation. The Confederation brings order to the galaxy," the Admiral responded, though with less conviction than before. "Without our guidance, chaos would reign. Perhaps that was true once, Josephine acknowledged. But systems evolve, Admiral. Needs change. The rigid hierarchy that served the galaxy thousands of years ago may not be what's needed now. She leaned forward slightly. We are offering an alternative. Not destruction of the Confederation, but transformation. A more equitable relationship between worlds based on mutual benefit, rather than dominance and submission. The High Council would never agree to such terms, the Admiral said flatly. The High Council doesn't represent the will of all Confederation citizens, Josephine countered. As I believe your own internal surveys have shown, Zondar couldn't remain silent any longer. Ambassador Parker, he interjected, what exactly are you proposing? Josephine's expression softened slightly. A new treaty, Ambassador Zondar. Not between Earth and the Confederation, but between the Free Worlds Alliance and the Confederation. A treaty that recognizes our independence while establishing frameworks for cooperation in areas of mutual interest. And if we refuse, the Admiral demanded. Then you are welcome to test your fleet against our defenses, Josephine replied calmly. But before you do, I suggest you review the data I have provided to Ambassador Zondar. It may help you understand the true stakes of this confrontation. She nodded respectfully. You have 1 hour to consider our proposal before your fleet reaches our defensive perimeter. I hope to speak with you again under more peaceful circumstances. And the transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. This is absurd, the Admiral finally declared. A primitive species and a handful of disaffected worlds dictating terms to the Confederation? Unthinkable. Admiral Zondar said carefully. Perhaps we should at least review the information she provided before dismissing it entirely. Kraz-Tur studied him with narrowed eyes. You seem oddly sympathetic to their position, Ambassador. I'm sympathetic to avoiding unnecessary conflict, Zondar corrected. Especially when the outcome may not be as certain as we have assumed. After a tense moment, the Admiral nodded curtly. Very well. Show me this supposedly damning evidence. In his private chamber adjacent to the bridge, Zondar accessed the data Parker had transmitted. What he found left him speechless. Internal Confederation communications, classified research reports, and even recordings of High Council sessions that were supposed to be impenetrably secure. This is impossible, the Admiral muttered as they reviewed the material. How could they have accessed this information? The how may be less important than the what, Zondar pointed out. This confirms everything Parker claimed. Growing dissent within member worlds, suppressed technological advancements, even preliminary communications from Confederation officials to this Free Worlds Alliance. He highlighted a particularly damning section. And this projections from our own predictive algorithms division suggesting that military action against Earth has only a 37% chance of success, with potentially catastrophic consequences for Confederation stability regardless of outcome. The Admiral's crest drooped slightly, a rare display of uncertainty from the usually confident military leader. The High Council didn't share these projections during mission planning. Because they contradict the narrative of Confederation invincibility, Zondar suggested. A narrative that's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. For several minutes, they continued reviewing the data in silence. Finally, the Admiral spoke again, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. If this information were to become widely known throughout the Confederation, it would fundamentally alter the balance of power, Zondar finished for him. Perhaps that's exactly what humans are counting on. The Admiral checked the mission clock. We have 23 minutes before we reach their defensive perimeter. 23 minutes to make a decision that could change the course of galactic history. The decision seems clear to me, Zondar said quietly. We can initiate a conflict with uncertain outcome that might destroy the very institution we are trying to protect. Or we can open a dialogue that acknowledges the changing reality of our galaxy. Kraz-Tur was silent for a long moment, his 3 eyes fixed on the data display. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a military leader making perhaps the most significant decision of his career. Open a channel to Ambassador Parker, he ordered, and prepare to bring the fleet to standby status. When Josephine's face appeared on the screen again, she showed no surprise at the earlier-than-expected communication. Admiral Kraz Tur, Ambassador Zondar, she greeted them. Have you reached a decision? We have, the Admiral said formally. The 7th Fleet will maintain position outside your defensive perimeter while preliminary discussions take place regarding this treaty proposal of yours. A small smile touched Josephine's lips. A wise decision, Admiral. I suggest a neutral location for these discussions. We have a station at the midpoint between our current positions that could serve the purpose. Agreed, the Admiral nodded. Ambassador Zondar will represent Confederation diplomatic interests, with myself present as military liaison. Excellent, Josephine replied. I look forward to meeting you in person, Admiral. And to seeing you again, Ambassador Zondar. As the transmission ended, Zondar felt a profound sense of both relief and trepidation. This wasn't a victory or a defeat for either side, it was the beginning of something entirely new. A fundamental restructuring of galactic politics that had begun the moment one human woman had simply refused to sign on the dotted line. The High Council will not be pleased, the Admiral noted as they prepared to board a shuttle for the negotiation station. Perhaps not initially, Zondar agreed. But if these negotiations succeed, they may eventually recognize this as the moment that saved the Confederation from itself. As their shuttle departed the dreadnought, Zondar gazed out at the massive fleet holding position before the human defensive network. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, a species the Confederation had dismissed as primitive and insignificant, had been the catalyst. He couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these unpredictable humans might have in store for the galaxy. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the age of unquestioned Confederation dominance was over. And perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing after all.